Hello and welcome to Zak's Traders Cafe. Today I'm joined by Henry Elder, who's CEO at Satsuma. How are you today, Henry?
I'm great, Zach. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Right, we were just talking offline that maybe I'm not quite up to scratch in terms of Satsuma as I should be. My excuse is that you're a relatively new appointment, and also the company's changed its name. So just as I was getting used to Tau Alpha, we changed the name. So maybe with all that in mind, if you can just explain the recent events of the company and then obviously why you've turned up.
Yeah, certainly. So I became CEO in the middle of July. We changed the name from Tau Alpha to Satsuma for a couple of reasons. One that was kind of difficult is the operating business of the company is to run subnets in the BitTensor ecosystem, which is a decentralized AI infrastructure ecosystem. And having the company name be exactly the same as the asset of Tau Alpha, it makes it very difficult to stand out. Because if you go online and you search for Tau, right, Tau Alpha doesn't show up in any searches. What shows up is BitTensor itself. And so we wanted to make it easier for our investors and people who were interested in learning more about the company to find the company with a more unique name. And so we settled on Satsuma, which to us is sort of like represents this sort of new exciting field that we are operating in, and is sort of a wink and a nod to the Bitcoin treasury policy, which seems to have gotten the market incredibly excited.
And obviously, a lot of the other big fruits have already been taken by other companies in the recent past.
That's right. We just wanted the tiny little orange.
Okay. Well, orange is taken and apple's taken, et cetera, et cetera. So that is all good. The issue now is there are lots of other companies in the Bitcoin treasury, or the crypto treasury, I suppose you could widen it a bit, crypto treasury area, lots of companies in AI. And investors who are looking around the place maybe are trying to work out, which is the wood and which is the trees.
So let me back up a little bit. I think it would be instructive to talk about my history a bit and how I ended up here. So I previously was at a firm called UTXO Management. And UTXO Management is essentially the premier investor globally in Bitcoin treasury companies. It's a fund that has been investing in the Bitcoin space since 2019. And we have been huge cheerleaders of Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, and have been invested there as well for a long time. And so Michael Saylor wrote the playbook for Bitcoin treasury companies, and UTXO took that playbook and applied it internationally. We did the first ever Bitcoin treasury outside of the US, which was Metaplanet with Simon Jerevich there. And that was an absolutely incredible experience. Incredible experience. I don't think that we could have possibly settled on a better first company and operator than Simon and Metaplanet. And actually, the name here, Satsuma is a Japanese Mandarin orange. And part of the reason we chose that name was a nod to the way that Metaplanet has innovated this strategy outside of the United States. And from there at UTXO, we did the second ever Bitcoin treasury strategy outside of the United States in Hong Kong with Moon Inc. And then we did the third one and the fourth one and the fifth one, and I think the sixth one. And then we did Nakamoto in the United States, which is one of the leading Bitcoin treasury companies of this 2025 sort of generation. So we have an incredible amount of experience with these Bitcoin treasury strategies. And what became increasingly clear to us as we were putting these into each market was that there are certain markets that are incredibly well suited to Bitcoin treasuries. Japan was one of them. The United States, of course, is the other one. The best market in the world outside of the United States is actually probably London. And that became increasingly clear the more experience we got with the London markets, the deeper our due diligence went, the more that we spoke with the institutions there. And the issue I think that had emerged in London with Bitcoin treasury companies was one that a number of those that had started either didn't really have that sort of expertise in Bitcoin, the expertise in accumulating Bitcoin, managing Bitcoin, having been in the Bitcoin space for a long period of time, as UTXO has, as I have. I've been full-time in the digital asset space since 2018. I built one of the largest corporate crypto treasury management platforms at Wave Digital Assets in 2020. And then also built a DeFi, a decentralized finance management arm there. Combined, those businesses managed well over $1 billion with me at the head. And I managed that capital through the downturn of 2022, which was one of the most severe downturns that we've experienced. Very, very few people have that kind of expertise managing that size of digital assets through the mind-bending volatility that you experience in this space. And so as a result, right, most of the companies that had sort of launched here raised small amounts of capital, or they were on Aquis. And it seemed like that was sort of driven by perhaps a fear of the regulatory burdens that come with being on the London Stock Exchange. Now, at UTXO, we had launched Bitcoin treasury companies in half a dozen markets, dealing with half a dozen different regulators. That is not something that we are afraid of. And first of all, if there's any market that should be participating in a revolution in financial and industrial markets, it should be London. Absolutely, 100%. If that's going to happen in London, it should be happening on the London Stock Exchange. So we took a look at that and we said, all right, how can we help a company essentially do this on the LSC? And Satsuma was that company. As time went on and the scope of the potential that was available in London became clearer and clearer for a treasury strategy like this, it just made all the sense in the world for me to focus all of my time and all of my effort on this company and bringing this combined revolution to the London markets with both Bitcoin, the decentralized stateless money, and AI built on decentralized infrastructure. These are probably the two most important technologies in the world today. And we've combined them in one company, and we have raised 163.66 million pounds to go and do this in London.
Right, so that's a big. There's lots to unpack there. The fact that you've been around the block. Lots of people say they've been around the block and they haven't been around the block. They don't even know one end of a Bitcoin from the other. You have the experience. You've been through the mill with the regulators, international experience as well. The thing which maybe even you in your position have to face, though, is that in the last 2-3 months, lots of Bitcoin treasury strategy companies have come on board. Obviously, everyone's AI these days as well. It does still come back down to, you've highlighted your plus points in differentiation of the company. What do you think is the best way of you highlighting that Satsuma is the place to look at, as you know, you've explained to me over the last 5-10 minutes, as opposed to other companies who are shouting and saying, we're the best, go with us?
So I think it's very important, as Satsuma wants to be the institutional leader in London. And so one of the keys of taking that role is to look at the example that Michael Saylor and Strategy have shown in the United States. And the example that Saylor has set is that, you know, we don't talk down about Bitcoin treasury companies. We don't talk about necessarily what everyone else is doing wrong. What we want to do is provide an example and help those companies to say, here are the best practices. Here are the ways, you know, that you can safely accumulate Bitcoin. Here are the downsides. Here are the risks. Here's how you mitigate them. Here's how you hedge them, et cetera, et cetera. Saylor has been, just incredibly generous in providing his insights and helping other people to learn from the things that they did right and the things that they did wrong. And we want to do that for London as well. So look, I don't think that there's any point in sort of putting together a laundry list of what we see people doing wrong or people doing right. What we want to do is basically say, look, this is how we're doing it. And we are doing it with the benefit of more experience doing this than anyone else in the world, save Strategy and Michael Saylor. And what we hope is that the other companies that are implementing these policies in London will follow that example, and that will provide the foundation for this to take off in London. Because as you've seen, it has taken off incredibly in the United States, and we want to see that exact same thing happen in London. So I don't necessarily see it as well, this is why you should invest in us and not in them. I actually want more of them. I want more Bitcoin treasury companies. I want more IPOs in London, because ultimately that tide raises all the boats. And that will reestablish London in the IPO market, but will also help people to look beyond the sort of malaise that I think some people have felt in London over the last years as IPOs have gone elsewhere. People have forgotten that London remains one of the best markets, one of the largest markets in the world for secondary issuances, which is the lifeblood of Bitcoin treasury companies. London has the largest corporate fixed income capital markets outside of the United States, which is the holy grail for Bitcoin accumulation, right? Those are things that exist uniquely in London. And the more that people realize that, the more that people will come here and implement these strategies in the UK as they should be. And Satsuma benefits from that. And if it's more competition, we're not afraid of competition, and we are happy to be that sort of North Star for those companies.
I have to say, I don't think I've ever heard anyone who's British and don't sound very British speak so highly of the London market. Normally it's the opposite. So that is, I think, a first in my experience. I'm glad you're very patriotic for the cause in London.
Well,
The other point,
I might be spoiled. I might be spoiled, Zach. I mean, we have had just an absolutely wonderful reception in London, and I'm incredibly appreciative for it.
yeah, well, I think my final point, and it's not one that you may or may not be able to answer, may not wish to answer, is that obviously May, June this year was that's when the tsunami of interest got into the London market in terms of Bitcoin treasury. And we had 1 to 10, 1 to even 100 rises in share prices over that period. Shares of Satsuma, obviously back down, maybe they're a tenth of what they were at the peak. The value of the company now only £14 million. Obviously, if I'm interested in your company, I'm very happy that I'm looking at the shares at 2.6p rather than at 26p. Is there any measure of value, or just a general, obviously you can't give a specific name, but is there any measure of value that you would say, well, market cap's 14 million, we raised 163, so that means something? Or is there any yardstick, which is important, not just for Satsuma, but just in the space? Is there any idea of value apart from just sticking your finger in the air and sort of seeing which way the wind blows?
Sure. So look, the core fundamental value that the market looks at for a company with a Bitcoin treasury strategy is what is the capability of the management team to execute an accumulation strategy that increases the amount of Bitcoin per fully diluted share. That is how the market values Bitcoin treasury companies in a nutshell. Can this management team increase the amount of Bitcoin that I own as a shareholder per share? You have to think of a Bitcoin treasury company as essentially like a passive Bitcoin accumulation vehicle for the shareholders. And so you want to look at those teams and say, can they do this for me? And depending on how confident the market is in the company's ability to accomplish that, they will price that company at a higher or lower multiple to the NAV. Now, of course, I feel incredibly confident with the management team that we have here, not just myself, but also Mark Moss, who next to me is one of the most experienced people in Bitcoin treasury strategies in the world. And so I hope that individuals who are evaluating Satsuma will look at that and our experience and the experience of the other members of the management team who are coming aboard. The other thing that is unique to Satsuma is that our existing business, the BitTensor business, the decentralized AI infrastructure business, one of the things that's so exciting about crypto in general is that it allows for businesses to be built on top of decentralized infrastructures. Commonly, we just think of this as the blockchain, right? But in essence, what that does is it abstracts away a lot of the capital expenditures that a company would normally need in order to launch some kind of an exciting business. It simplifies the launch of the business. It allows you to focus on, think of like a marketplace, right? Like a Facebook marketplace, or in the US, we have Craigslist or eBay, right? eBay just abstracts away the complexities of setting up your own shop. right? You can just post things online, and eBay handles virtually everything. You just got to mail it. A decentralized infrastructure is very similar. And so what it allows Satsuma to do is launch use cases and launch businesses on top of this decentralized infrastructure for very little cost, very little capital expenditure. And so it allows us to have a very lean operating business with exposure and asymmetric upside from the potential of artificial intelligence and that, agentic future that we're going into, where hopefully, we can just have these AI agents doing everything for us that we don't want to do. And of course, if we end up in that future, we also have these wonderful weight loss drugs. So we will be svelte and lazy, which I'm not sure that's a future that any of us expected.
It's the future I'm looking to. But in the meantime, Henry Elder, CEO at Satsuma, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure, Zach. Thank you.